One of the most highly anticipated Japanese role-playing games right now is Tales of Arise. Publisher and developer Bandai Namco clearly wants this game to be a hit, as it's been delayed several times and even moved to new platforms. I imagine this might also be plenty of people's first Tales game, so in today's video I'll be telling you everything you need to know about Tales of Arise. And if you enjoy JRPGs and JRPG content, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. So to begin, let's just go over some general information and then I'll dive into more details. So for the uninitiated, this is the 17th entry in the Tales series, but this is a brand new entry, a brand new story. It's not connected to any other game in the series. So for those of you that are worried that you might need to play other games, you don't need to worry about that. You can start with this game fresh, and this might actually be the perfect jumping on point. Now, the Tales series has been an action role-playing game series from the very beginning, and this doesn't change with Tales of Arise. And like I said earlier, we'll dive into the details of the combat system a little bit later. Now, this was developed and published by Bandai Namco and is being released on September 10th in the West for PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. This is cool because initially it was only coming to PC, PS4, and Xbox One, but it's nice to see the current gen systems being added as well. So let's dive into the story and characters. To start off, I want to read you the synopsis on the website. Reina has ruled over neighboring planet Donna for the past 300 years, pillaging the world beneath it of its resources and its people of their dignity and freedom. The story begins with two people born on different worlds, each looking to change their fate and create a new future. The two characters they're referring to are Alphen and Shion, so let's start with them first. Alphen is the character you've probably seen most often. He has the white hair with that mask, he's a sword user, and he's from Donna and he's fighting for his own freedom. Now, this character is being voiced by Ray Chase, and you'll probably know him best for Noctis in Final Fantasy XV, and more recently as the older protagonist from Nier Replicant. Shion is a gun user from Reina, and she's trying to protect her own people, and she's voiced by a familiar actress, Erika Lindbeck. For Tales fans, they might recognize her as Magilu from Tales of Berseria, but might be better known as Futaba Sakura from Persona 5 or Jessie from the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Another character they've introduced so far is Rinwell. Now, she's a magic user and not much is known about her. She's a little bit mysterious, but she clearly teams up with Alphen and Shion for her own personal reasons. I'm not totally sure who voices her, so we'll have to wait and see on that. And the last party member that we know of so far is Law. Now, he appears to be a martial artist that he uses like a lot of kicks and punches and stuff, and he works for the Renin police force. Now, this character sounds fairly familiar. I'm just not sure who voices him, but it sounds like the same voice actor that did Asbel from Tales of Grace's F, but we'll have to wait and see. Now let's dive into gameplay because there's quite a few new things here. Now, to begin, this is not an open world game despite what some of the trailers might look like. I like to call it a wide linear game. Think of something like Dragon Quest XI or Final Fantasy XII. There's quite a lot to explore, but at the end of the day, there's walls on either side and you are kind of funneled in one direction. And they've actually showed quite a few areas so far. The one they've shown the most is this sort of rocky, deserty area, and it looks really cool, very vast, and I haven't seen a town that's tied to it, so it might be like sort of just an area in between towns or in between dungeons. Next is this snowy area, and you've seen Alphen kind of swim through the water and fight some monsters there, and there also seems to be a town kind of at the end of some of this location here, but it's just been in that environmental trailer and you don't get to see the characters walking around, but clearly there is some sort of town in this snowy area. Next, you see this sort of mines area, and it possibly could be some sort of slave camp. In the story trailer, you see a lot of characters doing, mining and getting whipped and stuff like that. And in the environmental trailer, you see them running around. So those could be the same environment, but I'm not totally sure. Now, the last area that they've shown so far, and my personal favorite, the one I'm most excited to explore, is this massive, like, fantasy-esque town. It's got a big castle, a lot of, details. It looks really neat. And then it shows what appears to be the grassy area leading up to the town, which also looks really cool with like a little bridge and a little river. So I'm really excited to explore this town. And again, despite what earlier trailers might have implied, the combat is not seamless like you might find in something like an Ys game, but rather it seems to be like a typical Tales game where you hit an enemy and you'll transition into a battle arena. So the combat continues to be a real-time action system, and it looks very combo-based again like past Tales games. And the reason I'm guessing that is because if you look at the inputs on the right-hand side of the UI while they're fighting, there seems to be attack inputs that change depending on which input you put in first, so it seems like there's a lot of combo potential here, which is neat. And in like past Tales games, you can swap to any of your 4 party members on the fly with a touch of the D-pad. Now, in the footage we've seen so far, we've only seen up to 3 characters, but I imagine like in every Tales game, we're gonna have 4 characters in your party at once at some point, continuing with the Tales tradition. Now, one new thing I noticed in the combat trailer is they're fighting this sort of like rock monster, and Alphen's sort of hitting a weak point, which I haven't really seen in a Tales game before, and I've played quite a few. So that seems like a really cool added feature just to kind of keep combat fresh. You want to try to hit these weak points, weaken them so you can do more damage. I'll be curious to see how this mechanic progresses as the game goes on. Now this feature isn't exactly new to a Tales combat system, but there is team-up attacks, and they've shown 2 so far, one called Flaming Swing with Xion and Alphen, and Supreme Altar with Rinwell and Alphen. And after watching the trailer a few times, I'm guessing the way this works is if you notice there's a kind of bar over the enemy and it seems to be a break meter, and when you break them, there's this prompt that comes up called strike with a D-pad symbol. So my guess is once you break an enemy and you hit a direction on a D-pad, depending on which direction you push, that will kind of activate a super move with a corresponding character on that D-pad. So for example, if Xion is tied to the left button on the D-pad, you'll team up and do an attack with her. I'm not totally sure, they haven't explained this, but I'm just kind of putting 2 and 2 together here. Now what seems to be changing the most is the leveling up system. This looks very reminiscent of Final Fantasy X's sphere grid system in that you have skills across this panel, and they call it the skill panel, and you spend SP points, or I'm guessing skill points, for stat boosts or abilities. I kind of like this because it gives you, the player, kind of more flexibility to build your characters however you want. If you want to prioritize a certain skill or stat boost above something else because you want to build your character in a certain way, it gives you that opportunity, which I like. Now something else I noticed on the bottom of the screen, it said change titles. Now for those of you who aren't familiar, Tales has this system where you can give characters titles like, oh, I don't know, like awesome sword user or badass fighter. I'm making this up, that's not, those aren't real ones in past Tales games. But when you give a title to a character, it gives them certain stat boosts or abilities that you can unlock. So I'm glad to see that that is returning. Now for the equipment system, it seems to be pretty darn straightforward. You can equip a weapon, an armor piece, and an accessory. Now what I do like is that it shows the stat difference depending on the piece of equipment you're trying to equip, which I feel like every RPG needs this. I don't understand why some RPGs don't do this, and it doesn't make it clear what the stat improvements or downgrades will be, so I like that that's very obvious to see. Now let's talk about some new things in Tales of Arise. One thing that a lot of people seem to notice when they put out that gameplay trailer is that they have removed the post-battle skits. In past Tales games, there were these fun, kind of quirky little skits that they would do, like, oh yeah, we did a great job, or whatever, and they would high five. They were kind of cool, they were kind of fun, but I think they're removing them because it looks like Tales of Arise is going for a more grounded, serious story, so those like silly skits would be out of place is my guess. And it's unclear if they removed the optional story skits that sometimes pop up when you're just walking around the world. But hopefully they don't remove those because I know a lot of people enjoy those. I personally don't, but I know a lot of people do, so hopefully those are still in the game. Now this may not seem like a big deal, but I think it's important to kind of look one layer deeper with this next point, and that is that Tales of Arise is releasing simultaneously worldwide. Well, technically Japan's getting it a day earlier, but usually we have to wait months, if not years, for the English release after it releases in Japan. And why I think this is a big deal is because I think that signals to me that Bandai Namco is trying to push the series to the next level, or just make it a bigger series than it's ever been before. You know, I've heard a lot of people say this could be the Tales series Persona 5 moment, you know, like breaking out into the masses and have it be a big thing. I mean, like Joker's in Smash now, right? And there's no Tales representation in Smash Brothers, at least not a main character. You know, I think this could be Bandai Namco's chance. I think a lot of people are paying attention to the Tales series that haven't in the past, so I think this is really their big opportunity to make it something more. And they're also using a new engine for the series, Unreal Engine 4. Now for the uninitiated, engines are tool sets that game creators use to make the games. So previously the Tales series used an internal proprietary engine, but now I think they just sort of want to, you know, streamline the process, use something that is very familiar that a lot of people use. So they're going to be using Unreal Engine 4, and immediately I feel like there's a huge visual upgrade. Now if you compare this to the last game in the series, Tales of Berseria, if you put it side by side, it's pretty clear how much of a visual upgrade it is. There's more details all over the world and in the characters, there's better lighting, there's better animation. I noticed that right away with the animations. There were some kind of stiff running around animations in Tales of Berseria and just some of the more recent Tales games. So this seems to have more motion capture and things like that. There's just a huge production value bar that was raised with Tales of Arise. Now, if September is too long to wait to play a great action RPG, and you want to play one right now, then definitely check out my review for Ys 9 Monstrum Nox. It's currently available for PS4 and coming to PC and Switch really soon. And if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.